Welcome, everyone. We'll be getting started shortly. We're just going to wait for a few more people to arrive. So as you're getting settled, welcome. I'm Troy with Sage Presence. I'll be assisting Dean Hires today, who will be your presenter on how to win AEC projects, tailoring your presentations and conversations for virtual, in-person, or hybrid settings. We'll look forward to starting shortly.
Okay, in the interest of time, I think we'll probably get started. Hi, everyone. This is Kira Kellner with AIA Pittsburgh, or at least the voice of Kira Kellner of AIA Pittsburgh. Welcome and thank you for joining us this morning for How to Win AEC Projects, a presentation by Sage Presence. Before we officially get started, I just want to remind everyone, although it looks like you have all done a really great job with it, to make sure your first and last name are listed in the participant list. And if you have a moment, if you can actually chat directly to AIA Pittsburgh and let me know what your AIA member number is, that would be greatly appreciated so that we can report your credits for attending today. Otherwise, we will look you up in our database after the event and report them. And with that, I'm going to turn everything over to Troy Parkinson with Sage Presence. And Troy, you can take it from here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I hope you were well in your world and that you're gearing up here for a very insightful training here today that'll help you with your needs. So today's presentation is presented by Dean Hires of Sage Presence. Dean is the founder of Sage Presence and has spent over the last 20 years working with AEC firms, helping them win high-stakes interview prep. He's the author of Winning AEC Interviews and Winning Virtual AEC Interviews, which if you stick around to the tail end of the session, we'll give you a special code on that so that you can get your copy of the book. You pay for shipping, we'll send you the book. But Dean will talk more about that in a moment. As we get started here, we encourage you to, in your Zoom interface, to go into presenter mode so that you can see Dean in his entirety. He'll be demonstrating some things on camera tips that'll be helpful as well. We really do want this to be an interactive experience, so we encourage you to put your questions in to the chat window. It gives us an opportunity to track those. I'll track the questions and Dean will be answering them and I'll interject them. Also, we would love to know where you fall within the AEC industry. Obviously, you're all architects here, a majority of you, I'm sure, in the AIA world. But we'd love it if in the chat window you could just tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of your role, whether you're an architect, whether you're in marketing or a support role within AIA. But without further ado, Dean, take it away.
All right, wonderful to be here again with AIA. I can't recall if I've actually been to the Pittsburgh physical locale or not. I've done a lot of virtual and live presenting to AIA over the years. So it's always a great place to come back home and meet more wonderful people in the field. Now, I want to echo something Troy said. We'll get into this very quickly. But I have 97 PowerPoint slides that I can drag you through, and I can present at you one slide at a time. Or we can be a little more interactive, which to me means I'm going to give you a little setup of kind of who we are so that you have a sense of what questions you might have. But I'd love to take this a little more like car talk, like a talk radio show, like chat in your questions, and we're going to try to respond to them. Any questions we don't get to, we'll provide a little PDF summary to make sure that we've answered them all. And no matter what, I'm going to present what I came here to present. So you don't have to worry about, well, what if we didn't ask the right question and therefore didn't get the right content? So let me set up the subject here today and be thinking, what would you want to know from a team like Sage Presence? Now, a lot of people in AIA know us from one of two books. It was either our Winning AEC Interviews book or our Winning Virtual AEC Interviews book that you're going to get a complimentary copy of today. What's partially helpful to understand is we're going to live in a strange new hybrid world. We're not quite sure what 2021 and 2 are going to be. We're pretty clear on what 2020 was and how different that was from everything before. So think about the subject of presence, which is a key ingredient of winning over your audiences. The reason presence is a key ingredient is you are in professional services. You doing your service changes the service. It's not the same service as someone else does it, which means you can't really sell your service without selling the people that deliver the service. And your presence, your messaging, your strategy to communication shows a certain you. And you're selling you. Look at another professional service. Have you ever picked law? We don't want to deal with the legal field. We usually have to deal with the legal field. We pick our lawyer. We pick a person who we can trust to guide us through the field of law. We don't pick architecture, we pick architects. We pick architectural teams, we pick construction teams. So I'm here to help you maximize the human aspect of your prospects and clients' understanding of you. So it's going to be, what questions do you have related to bringing winning presence so you can succeed at all of these different venues? I have my professional presence. Then I have my stage presence, when I get up in front of a group for an interview and present, or a project in midstream on a project, you do a lot of presenting. There's also screen presence. We're back to screen presence. So a cool thing to understand about Sage Presence is we're all former filmmakers. We came from the film side of life. Troy produced documentary and programming for the Discovery Channel. I made an indie feature film and ran a media business. We've spent tremendous amount of time working with actors on presence on the screen and on the stage. And we've spent a tremendous amount of time working with writers to strategize messaging. And that brought us into your world somehow. And so, we have been implementing our methods on some pretty big and many, a whole range of project scopes. So we coached US Bank Stadium, Zuckerberg Hospital, University of California. Oh, shoot, I forgot which California hospital. We have done quite an array of projects. Las Vegas Raiders Stadium was another one that we were involved in the coaching, and we coach for architects, construction, and engineering. So that's who we are. What I observe is the AEC industry builds their interviews and their presentations and their teams to come and present to win their job. And as an industry, you would never build a building the way you build your interviews. And what I see is everyone's got a voice. It's kind of like designed by consensus. And we start building while we're designing our messages, while we're figuring out our PowerPoint, where it all is one big mess in a rushed timetable to get to the interview. Now, what that's like is, imagine if you're doing the initial rough sketches of a facility on the day that they're pouring concrete, on the day that they're mudding the walls, on the day that you're rolling down the carpet. You don't do it all at once. You have 3 clear phases. You strategize to the point that you have a design. I don't know if you still use the word blueprint anymore, but the blueprint, at least symbolically, is the design of the building. You kind of need to strategize to design, then you start building, and then you decorate. And in a lot of ways, the interview process is like that. We need to strategize how we're going to approach our interview. Then we need to build the messages according to that strategy. And then the human presenters, I hope this doesn't sound like diminishing this. It's so powerful, but it's like the interior design. The experience you have of the presentation is the person, just like the experience of a building is the experience of the interior. So you really need to work through those 3 phases if you want to win more interviews. So what I'd like to do is open up the floor. You've got a former filmmaker who has spent 20 years helping people win in 3 zones: live in-person interviews, the classic; virtual interviews where it's screen presence and you're trying to win over an audience you can't even see sometimes, or even if you can see them, you just don't have the same body language cues that you do in a room. And then complicating life is the hybrid, where some of them are live and some of them are virtual, and some of our team is live and some of us are virtual. How do you orchestrate all that? So let's start with you all. You've been dealing with the virtual side for a year. Live is coming back and hybrid is emerging, and all 3 venues are going to be there. And I don't think the world is going to go back to what it was. It's going to go back to what it was, plus what it was last year, plus new creative versions that connect people in a more borderless world. So what would you like to know from a guy like me?
I think first off, Dean, a big question that always comes in is how do you navigate the virtual space? What are the key tips you have when it comes to how to present yourself on the camera?
Sure. Do you want me to start deep or superficial? Am I thinking practically, Troy?
Yeah, I would think practically. Just give people a high-level overview of your camera tips.
Okay, so one of the things that we deal with is that we actually have to think about our camera angle. We're kind of responsible for our shot now. You notice how you never were responsible for the angle when you walk into a room and sit down at a meeting or stand in front of the big U and present the big horseshoe. You're not responsible for the angle. You're responsible maybe for the PowerPoint, but it's just not your problem. If we go to an interview and I can tell you're in your bedroom and I can see the closets open a little bit and I can see hangers or something like that, or you've got a strange virtual background and every time you move your hands, your fingers are disappearing, it's our fault. We're responsible for the background and the angle. So let me give you a couple quick tips. We'll give you a review screen of some of the keys so you can do a screen capture of it. But one of the first things to think about is the angle itself. And I have found, you'll notice I'm standing. People will just sit in their office and do their interviews. And it's not, a better way to think about this is if I would stand, if I were there, I'm going to stand. If you bring me down to AIA Pittsburgh to do a presentation, I'm going to be standing. Why not stand here? I will sit if it feels strategically right to create kind of the working session feel. Sitting is like working together, the round table. Standing shows authority and it pays respect, and I'm going to pay you the respect and I'm going to try to command my own authority. I'm standing. Another tip when it comes to angle is we've discovered that level is a really good idea. You want to be level. And so many people present, like when we worked in film, if we want to make someone powerful, we look at them from below. We have these big, powerful people presenting because we're sitting at a desk and looking up at our ceiling. Or we'll have people who look down on themselves and that you kind of look hopeful. And when you go level, and suddenly you've got an on the level experience. So I place my camera right at about here. So I'm just ever so subtly a little bit bigger in the frame, but it's a very level experience. The other advantage around level is like if you were live in a presentation, you might walk around. When I step back away from my camera, I'm still in the shot. And if you're looking up at yourself, when you step back, you go down. And so you want to try to consider always level. I'm level when I'm sitting and I'm level when I'm standing. And this creates a good shot. Make sense? So what we've covered is getting level with the camera. And let's talk about background a little bit. I don't have a great answer. I don't like virtual backgrounds because they tear and they vibrate. If you want to see me with 2 ears and hair, better keep the virtual screen off. If you want to see hair coming and going, ears coming and going, fingers coming and going, turn on a virtual background. Plus, as you tear into that background, you get a glimpse back there. And then audience is kind of like, God, I wonder where that person is. Oh, God, they're in their kitchen. You know, don't use virtual backgrounds. They're not good enough yet, and they don't look right, and they flicker. What I like to do is, because of the last year, you probably know I'm in my house. You probably know that. You might not be sure, but you don't know where I am in my house. So I tend to pick a background that's got some interest to it. I've got a lamp, I've got a screen. There's something of interest. However, you can't quite tell where I am. So I found an abstract place. I created a brand consistent kind of a studio set. Trainer from film creates something that feels like a studio. And so I tend to be abstract, but with some visual interest, not too much clutter. All right, so let me pause there, Troy. Am I going where you wanted to go? I could talk about lighting really quick. Okay, so I don't like subjects like lighting. I'm not a lighting expert, but I can give you a couple basic tips. You want to light yourself somewhat evenly. You want to light yourself at least one main light from the top. It's your key light is what we call it in film. It's above, kind of like the sun, lighting you the way the sun would look, because people look most normal when they're lit the way the sun lights them. So I have one of these lights. I'll show it to you. Where is it? There it is. I have this Heavenly Halo circle light that I bought for 70 bucks on Amazon. And I put it up high and I shine it down. Then I've got a little baby one that's off to the side that I light. So I give a little side light to fill. It's pretty much all I've got. But you want to be careful about weird lighting options. A lot of times you have like a big light behind you, and this doesn't show you as much, but it's a glare, and then you become silhouette. Some people light themselves for below. This is what you do in film to make someone evil. I am evil, I will destroy you. You know, that's the effect of lighting underneath, is usually makes people look evil. So you want to light yourself from above, and you want to light yourself, fill it out so that you're lit somewhat evenly. And I just, what's pleasant. So Troy, let me stop there. And have I covered the basics you were hoping for?
Yeah, just two other key points is, what is your recommendation on microphones, headphones, having mics, not having mics? And also, do you use your laptop camera, or are you having a secondary camera available?
I'm using my laptop. I will probably upgrade. We'll see. What I like is the middle of the roadness of just using my I don't want to show up to you with some setup you're not going to do. This is my onboard camera. This is my onboard sound. And as far as the whole headset thing, it was really strange looking when people first started wearing them. You get onto a meeting and somebody's got those big, huge headsets and they look like a helicopter pilot or a radio show host. And I'm not a radio show host. I'm not a helicopter pilot, so I don't like them. But people have gotten used to them. So the good news is anything goes. People are getting away. That's right. People are being reacted to quite well, having headsets, earbuds, the little AirPods, any of it goes. I tend to go with as little as possible because I just want to be a person to you. And I feel the same way as a speaker. When I speak, I don't really want a big microphone to be talking in. I want to be free. So I'll probably upgrade to a lapel mic so that my voice is the same when I back up as when I'm up close. So I have to monitor my volume. If I get close, I have to get quieter. So I'd rather have a lapel mic, but I'm just going with the basics. And I've learned something I often forget is, sometimes it helps to clean the lens a little bit and make sure your lens is clean. But that's how I feel about it. Everything's good. Some of those really like one-sided ones where you have one headset and a little spike mic look kind of techie. If you're kind of going for that look, it can look pretty cool. So here's the thing worth maybe a screen capture. Set your stage, not too crowded, not right up against the wall, close your closet doors, think about what the background says, try to be abstract. Light your set. Get a light up in the sky like the sun, fill it with other lights, simple. Stand to show respect, sit to create a working session feel, camera at mouth height, and then try to get everybody to match similarly. So Troy and I don't have the same background, but Troy and I are about the same size in camera. Troy, let's see your angle. I want to see, are you level? He usually is level. He's usually matching me, but I saw his angle today. He looked a little off level. Troy, let's see your shot. I want to critique you.
Can you see me now?
Yeah. So okay, perfect. So spotlight your own video if you can, just so I can talk. So Troy is very similarly sized. We each have a sport coat and a business shirt with no tie. We may or may not have pants. Nobody knows. That's another reason not to have the looking down angle. And we often match more because we're both actually in old houses. I have found a more abstract background, but at least we're the same size. So I'm not up here. He's not way back there. And watch your video when you're on these things. I've seen people like presenting like this. Don't present like this, get in the shot, or more commonly just down here. So a whole bunch of headroom and it's like a little kid looking over the countertop. All right, so I think that's all we want to say for camera angle. Do we have any questions? Let's get meatier here. We want to help you win. We want to help you win over your clients. We want you to make that impression that distinguishes you as human beings, because at the time of your interview, your fee is what your fee is. If that's part of the interview, it may or may not be. Your strength of your team, everything is set at that point. Your X factor is the human being. You can win them over. And hopefully you've strategized the other things to position yourself well. But that is a performance moment. What can I answer for you?
I think, Dean, nothing's come yet in the chat box, and feel free again, folks, to put the questions in the chat window. But I do want to touch on a key thing that Sage Presence teaches, and that is the dynamics of interview prep. What are the 3 phases of interview prep according to Sage Presence? And maybe you can kind of break down each one of those steps in terms of how do you prepare for an interview, whether it's virtual, live, or hybrid?
All right, I'll give a little prep conversation. I'll talk about those things. Let me just scold the audience for a second. You have the chance to let me steer to you. Don't be crickets. Chat something in, chat something that I can help you with so that we can steer this. Otherwise, I'm getting out the 97-point slide presentation. All right, great, stuff's starting to come in. Please chat in your questions, and Troy's going to ask them to me, and then I'll respond. But to Troy's question, thank you for the participation, Troy. We have strategy, message design, and delivery rehearsal. What I usually do is step through those phases, strategize in about usually a half day. I tend to develop messages with teams in about a day, sometimes 2 days. And we tend to get a day, sometimes 2 days to rehearse. I tend to move in those 3 phases. The one big exception is that for delivery, I usually do a little delivery workshop so people can learn the art of presence earlier, so they're not learning new skills the day before. So I build in a beat of delivery really early. So we strategize, we get the team together, do a little presentation workshop, then it's designer messages, and then rehearse before the interview. We're often involved for 2.5 to 4 days to develop an interview, but you can season that to taste. The steps of strategy to me that are most important, because of virtual, I'm spending more time making sure we figure out how to show team synergy, because selection committees are asking for it. What we try to do is figure out our point of view on a project. We try to figure out what the selection committee personalities are like so we can hopefully adapt to them. And we try to come up with an approach that fits the selection committee and our point of view. That's what strategy is. We're strategizing how we're going to go about the interview. Are we formal? Are we interactive? Are we conversational? What is the approach we're going to take? And if those things align, we know our point of view, we know what the selection committee people are like, and we have an approach that combines those. That's a pretty good place to be. Message design, I don't know if I want to go into great lengths on this right now. We want to make sure that we develop our points according to the way we've strategized how the selection committee wants to hear them. So you get a bunch of analytical engineer types. They kind of need all the details before they're going to get the point. You get classic CEO types. They need the point first and then the details. So you design your information and you build your messages accordingly. The thing to recognize, your teams need to understand the difference between the points and the details. If they mix them all up, you've got a cloud. So we're always sifting them out. Here's our point. Here are the details of that point. Or here are the details that build to this clear point. And finally, rehearsal and delivery. We're really working at screen presence, stage presence, hybrid presence. We're trying to figure out how to show synergy. And this last step is very organic, but recognize that your people will avoid rehearsal. Your people will do almost anything to avoid practicing. So what they're going to try to do is maximize the absolute most discussion time possible. They're going to want to keep talking about it. And what that does is it builds too much content. Then you get to your interview and you've got an hour of content in a 20-minute presentation or 2 hours of content for a 45-minute presentation. You really want to think, you want to abbreviate the discussion and don't overbuild the details. Fine, take a day and talk about the project to ad nauseum to make sure everybody understands it. And, but we're not going to win on how many details we can pack in a 45-minute presentation. We're going to win on really delivering a presentation well and responding incredibly in Q&A. And obviously you'd love to have more time, but we had a group that suddenly got an extra week. And you know what they did? They just discussed that week away and were in the same place when it got to it, because what they want to do is avoid dry runs. So let me back off. Have we got
a couple of questions that have come in now in relation to that? So do you suggest changing the content of a PowerPoint for a virtual interview instead of in person? And sometimes we're asked to send the presentation ahead of time. So how do you navigate PowerPoint in a virtual environment?
PowerPoint is a frustration for me. I actually like it in live presentations, and I don't like it so much in virtual because it dominates so much of the screen. Now, if you do this, depending on your platform, say Zoom, for example, you can ask the audience to slide the little slider over and get the PowerPoint a little smaller and the people a little bigger, but you don't know if they're going to do it. So I find that frustrating. I would rather have it be like the news. So I'm talking to you and screens come up when I need them. So what I tend to do is create zones of the presentation that don't have the PowerPoint up. So why would you need a PowerPoint up during the open? You're going to come in and set the stage, and your executive is going to make, explain our point of view and talk about the importance of your project. And we've got 75% of the screen showing a vision of the building. Take it down. So I try to establish, maybe there's a screen. You notice how PowerPoint's gone? When you first came on, there was a PowerPoint up. PowerPoint to set the stage. Once the open starts, take it down. And have PowerPoint where you need it, but strategize how to have places where it isn't. So I'll give one more example. Let's say we were doing an interview where we were being interactive as we went. Maybe we're incorporating Q&A at the end of, at the end of the design section, we take Q&A. At the end of the budget section, we take Q&A. At the end of schedule, we take Q&A. If we're doing that, get rid of the PowerPoint during the Q&A. And then don't bring it up until after someone's introduced the next topic. Now, when we're diving into the details, the PowerPoint comes back up. So use it, watch the news and just look at how they use graphics. You're trying to do a step in that direction, because in the news, the anchor is the presenter. A human being that you've come to trust presents you the news, and the graphics are backup. Don't ever be the narrator to your PowerPoint. You are the anchor to this news that you have to share with them, and graphics are your backup. I'm going to stop on that one.
Great. Another question comes in, Dean, is what if you have multiple presenters and are presenting as a team? How do you do it both live, virtual, and hybrid? And how do you make that connection?
That is a beautiful question. The answer is, well, actually, let me start with the goal. The goal is to show synergy. So Sage Presence has interviewed a lot of panelists, selection committee members who made virtual choices, and they say they're looking for synergy. The virtual platform is the worst place to show synergy anywhere. Now, I think the synergy is just as much the goal in a live presentation or a hybrid presentation. It's just that in the virtual platform, it's harder to do. So let me toss this premise out. Showing synergy is having multiple people talk at once. Well, not talk at once, but talk together. And it's really hard to do with a Zoom environment. I can't see my team members as well. There's a 2-second delay. I don't know when to hop in. And the classic experience is you sense a break, you hop in, but you realize the other person kept talking. So then you stop and apologize about the point where they hear you hopped in. Wanting you to hop in, they say, oh, I'm sorry, you go. By the time you hear that, they have given up you and they start going again. And it's just this back and forth. Nobody can figure out when to talk. So Troy and I are going to model for you a simple tag team. We're going to show it to you first. Maybe we'll talk through the rules of it as we go.
One of the key things about a good tag team is the ability to listen to each other. When you hear that the other one is done with the conversation, it gives you a chance to jump in.
So if you really get what Troy is saying, active listening to each other is what shows synergy. Synergy isn't two people talking. It's two people who care about
each other. If you happen to interrupt someone while they're talking, you make an agreement that the interrupter gets the right of way.
And he surprised me by hopping in there. But what I did is I'm committed to letting him talk. We have a deal. If either of us interrupts, the one interrupted stops and smiles and is happy, and interrupter has the right of way. And that way we can keep going back and forth like this for as long as we have to.
Because of that, we've established a strength in our teamwork and in our partnership that we trust each other. We know that no matter what happens, and even if I ramble on and on and on a key point, Dean knows that
I can hop in and we have an agreement. So we're going to be one voice together. Is it perfect? No. Does it show synergy? Yes. The reason it shows synergy is you can see us listening to each other. You see the gears processing together, and you can tell we like each other. Now, by the way, we might not like each other. Now we do, but you wouldn't know. And so, okay, so we're done with the demo on this, but you saw a seamlessly or pretty seamlessly tag team. The communication of synergy is worth the little bit of taxing on imperfection that comes with that platform. What we're doing is actually what you would do live too. It's just that you have to work at it a little harder in this platform. Most people get this down in 10 minutes of practice. So imagine a presentation where one person kicks off a topic, then a couple people hop in and tag team, and then the person who kicked it off closes down the subject. And what you've got is formal, casual, formal. And it shows two different things. I want you to see that I can present. You're probably going to expect me to present to your clients if you hire me. I have to win over the nursing staff or the educators or whoever it is. And so they want to see some formal. But the tag team shows casual and synergy, and that's what creates that magic. How do you think we did on answering that one, Troy?
Good. Let me just expand upon it again, because we've had this situation before. If you have multiple presenters in, say, a conference room and you're doing a virtual call, do you recommend having 4 people on screen or 5 people on screen? And how do you navigate when you got a lineup of people?
Well, okay. So one of the things to do is imagine, hopefully I'm answering the zone that you've talked about. I tend to recommend my audience go into presenter mode. So it's going to cut to whoever's speaking, and they may or may not follow that. They may just want to have it in gallery view. So we make our recommendations. The other thing is we might delegate certain people to certain topics. So if you're talking about the budget, wouldn't it make sense for the estimator to be one of the people in the tag teams? The estimator and maybe the project manager and someone else might be the people who are delegated to interact in this topic. Now we get on to looking at the site and looking at locations for the new building. Well, the designer is probably going to be part of that. You figure out how to cluster people so that we know where we're going to be, and then and then as far as visual, you're just going to decide, do we want them in gallery mode to see a bunch of people, or do we want to ask them to be in presenter view and let the camera be selected by who's talking? Is that answering your question?
Yes, and how about the situations where a team can be on site in their office? So you have four people in a conference room on one camera.
Well, let's just start with this. I don't like it. Here, let me see if I show you why I don't like it. So you've got people back here around a conference room table, and they get so small back there. You're not getting any of the information that you need to see someone for. This is a close-up only environment. That's the reality. This is a series of close-ups. We don't get the wide angles. They don't work very well in this platform. So I would rather put everyone in the office in a different room, have them dial onto the Zoom call and be a separate face, because this is a close-up environment. So putting you in a conference room, you think that that does better, but it usually doesn't. The only time I've done that is we did a hybrid interview for whatever reason. This was in Denver, and the laws at the moment, at the time of this interview, had limits on how many people could be in a room, which you still might have, which meant we had to split the selection committee into two rooms. And then we had to split our team into two rooms. And the selection committee also had virtual, and we also had virtual. We had people from our San Francisco office, and we had, whatever that combination was. So what we did is we put a great big TV, like a 70-inch TV, in each of the rooms. And we had a camera capturing our group and their group. Since it was a 75-inch TV, you could actually see that information between rooms. So our connection between these big screens and a wide shot allowed us to try to be more like a team. We had another camera putting everything in a Zoom call. So what that meant is we had a number of things to track. So if my audience is out here, I have to remember to look at you because you're the other room. Everyone in the other room is there. So I would talk to the audience, I would talk to the camera, and then we had another camera that was the Zoom. I would have to talk to that one. So we're talking to two different cameras and a live audience, and we're sharing our time. What do you think the other teams did? They only talked to the live audience, and the rest of us never got attended. So we were the only team that noticed you, that spent the time with you and with all of you in TV land. And that really made a difference in our connectability. So connectability has a lot to do with spending the lens time. Let me pause. We can back into that, or where would you steer me?
No, that was a great, and it actually piggybacked on a question that came in when one person wrote, "I can foresee a future in which some members of a jury committee are in the room and some are remote from home. How do you tailor that presentation to two different audiences at the same time?"
So we did kind of cover that. I'll try to expand on it. This isn't just foresee a time. I've been doing hybrid interviews like this since just before COVID. I don't know why it was the first, but the first one I remember doing was February of 2020, just before COVID, essentially established the virtual. So we had live people from different offices coming in, and we had to track that. What I want to do is back into a little tiny skill to make sure you understand this, and then I'll circle back to this question. The reason people aren't connecting to their audiences is they're not looking them in the eyes, but they think that they are. So in stage presence and in regular presence, meeting people live, human pecking order is established through eye contact. The strength, the command, the confidence is communicated by your willingness to look people in the eyes. And looking people in the eyes, even if your knees are knocking, if you've got shaky hands, but you're looking people in the eyes, you still come across confident, maybe confident under pressure, but confidence is eye contact. Now, when you first of all, people are doing that wrong. So live, what I want to suggest is people are doing, watch me look a little more nervous. What people do for eye contact live is they try to look at everybody. And so they make short little eye connections and they dart around the room. So in my head, I'm putting real people in the room. And there's something sort of, I don't know, skittish. I don't know what the word is for this, but it's really scanning the audience isn't the right way. So when I have a live audience, I do something different. I connect with only one person at a time. I look at one person. I never see the group. And when I look at you, you know it. And I spend time a person at a time. I keep switching every time it's a new thought. And sometimes a sentence has several thoughts in it. Whatever feels like it's complete is my point to break away. And I always complete the thought with the person I started with. That way you feel this is for you. It's like giving a chunk of bread to a bird, a nugget of thought. And I always stay with just the one person. And then I'm establishing myself confident and I'm letting them know that I see them. Now, virtual, everybody's in one eyeball and nobody's paying attention to that eyeball. Nobody's making eye contact. I've been looking at groups for a year. And what are they doing? They're looking at the eyes on the screen, which is not looking at you. So your perception is that I'm looking down and off to one side. I'm looking at your eyes. So you have to learn to look at the lens. Here's looking at your eyes. Here's looking at the eyeball through which you see eye contact. So I don't know if you've noticed, I've looked at the lens this entire presentation. I never break eye contact. Well, no, that's not true. I cheat glimpses at the screen just like you check your notes. Looking at the screen is like checking your notes. I do that. I even go to my thinky place sometimes. Process a deep thought and come back to you, but I'm largely talking to the lens and I listen into the lens as well. This is hard. It takes a little practice. You start to get used to tracking the blurry peripheral vision image of people and look at them when you need to look at them. But if you want to make a connection with your audience, if you look at the lens, you're the only one doing it, the only team that's looking in the lens, it's a really dramatic effect. So we coached a $2.3 billion construction interview on a Zoom meeting. We were the only team that looked in the lens. The selection committee didn't say, you know, we really noticed that you were the only teams looking in the lens. What they said was, we really felt the engagement of your team. They don't know why we landed so well, but a big piece of it is we spent our time with you instead of spending our time with the screen version of you. And took a little practice to get that down. So when it goes to hybrid, let's circle back to that. This is the camera that the Zoom people are on. Here's my audience. I'm going to look at one person in the audience, and then I'm going to look at another person in the audience. Then I'm going to look at the screen. Then I'm going to look at another person in the audience. Then I'll look at an audience, back to screen, back to audience. So I give a thought per person, but about every third or fourth one is into the camera lens. And that's how I connect to all the virtual people. So my virtual team and your virtual team, like the selection committee's virtual people and our virtual people are all in the lens. So look at a person, look at a person, look at the lens, look at a person, look at a person, look at the lens. And that way you pull it in. So in that interview in Denver, our experience was one team. We felt like a team together. Why? Because we looked in the camera that got the virtual, we looked in the camera that got the other room, and we looked at the people in the room, and we didn't neglect anyone. So that's a simple way to create the connectedness through virtual and in-person people.
New question here, Dean. How do you tailor your interview if you do not have a lot of information about your audience or selection committee?
Well, one simple way is, so I know a lot about AIA. One of the ways we're doing it is we're asking questions. So a simple approach to creating the connection is to just simply front load Q&A. Now, you can't always do that. State governments, a lot of universities, they have to have their rigid system and they won't let you interact with them. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't get the people to interact, but at least trying to work that in where you can create a connection. So why is it adapting to the audience? It's adapting because I'm allowing you to steer me. So this is a choose your own adventure model. I'm tracking what we are here to present, but you're choosing the order of the adventure by participating. When you don't participate, I had a backup plan. Troy is steering me. And so Troy will guide us until your feedback comes in. But this is very tailored, and it's what we plan to share. Look at this, two things at once. Giving you what we came to present tailored to you because you're choosing the adventure through Q&A. So that's probably the simplest way. What we prefer to do is essentially DISC profile. We call it DIRT profiling. DIRT is Sage Presence's model for a 4 personality type. We've got drivers, we've got inspirers, we've got relators and thinkers. Drivers, inspirers, relators, and thinkers. If you can figure out what personalities on your selection committee, it can tell you more passion and expression. Oh, no, a little more buttoned up, little bit more practical, a little more fiery and stern, or very, very appreciative. You can learn the emotional tones because drivers like stern. Thinkers, they're kind of flat. They really prefer information. Inspirers like me want a lot of passion. And relators really want the care and consideration of people. You can also adjust the order of your information. If drivers care about results, start with the end of the story. Here's where you got to be. By 2022, this needs to be in place. This is what's in the way. Here's how we'll get you there. So you can shift. Relators are people. Hit the main character of the story a little harder. And we want to talk about your nursing staff. This is who we're addressing in this section of our presentation. And your nursing staff is really exceptional, but they're suffering right now. So what I'm saying is you can decide what information order works with a different audience member by essentially figuring out what their personality types are. And drivers care most about results and they're stern. Inspirers, they care about visions and they're passionate. Relators, like HR kind of people, they're they're positive and warm and people focused. They need to hear about the people details. And thinkers want process details. Oh, beautiful, Troy. And now, by the way, here's a great use of graphics. Troy spotted what I was talking about, found a graphic and is bringing it up now. Isn't that a great use of graphics? So Sage Presence in our process we will find out the personality types of each selection committee member. And do you know how hard that is? We say, does anybody know them? Somebody knows them. We just ask them, what are they like? Are they blunt? Are they really sensitive? Are they careful? Are they really expressive? And in just like a 5-minute conversation on each person, we can kind of guess out who they are. And this tells us things to adapt properly. So what I like in an interview is we know what way to present our information. I'll give you one example. In the interview I mentioned, the $2.3 billion one, that was the highest stakes interview I've ever prepped, and it was on Zoom. They were all educators that had risen up into control. They were all thinkers. So guess what? A little more buttoned up, a little bit less expressive, and we started with all the details and built to our points. So our information was designed to fit them, and our emotions were designed to fit them. So big things I want to know on personality types is drivers and inspirers are concept first, detail second. And thinkers and relators, they care more about the details than the point, or they need to understand the details in order to understand the point. Drivers and thinkers are lower on emotion. Inspirers and relators are higher on emotion. If you know who's in the room, you can come up with a strategy to how to show yourselves the right way to adapt to them. But then backing up to the original, and I'll close. If you don't know the personalities of the selection committee, see if you can use interactivity to pull information that you can respond to. And by showing, listening, and responding to them, you are adapting. Call it on that one.
Excellent. Dean, maybe you want to share, I'm going to stop the screen share there as well. Let's just double check in. Oh, here's a good example from the audience. I once presented to a group that I thought were relators. They were thinkers. We lost.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I do is, since I present to a lot of audiences where I'm not completely sure, I try to have elements that should touch on each of them, but it's a lot easier if you really know. You can guess by profession if you're presenting to, if you know there's a lot of analytical positions. When I present to engineers, I expect thinker audiences. When I present to architects, I expect mixed audiences of inspirers and thinkers. And there is no cookie cutter answer, but if you attempt to figure it out, you can respond better. The next thing is live in the moment. I don't know if I like this as an interview suggestion, but when I'm presenting, if I'm reading the audience and saying, whoa, these are relators, not drivers, then there are certain things you can shift in the moment. Essentially, more sternness with drivers, more results focus, more passion if you start to sense, oh, these are inspirer types, more appreciation and care and kindness for relators, more Mr. Spock logic with thinkers. You can shift to some degree in the moment, but my larger message is try to strategize. And then in the end, it's a series of educated guesses. And just like a dinner party, no matter how well you plan it, the party has a life of its own. And you try to bring in guests that are going to get along, and certain things are not, at that moment, you're riding an experience, and you just have to paddle to the other side of that experience as best you can. But okay, I thought I saw a question come in.
Just another response. They were doctors. We should have known better was the follow-up.
Yeah, egos or practical thinking, or there's a lot of the professions will give you some strong hints.
A question that came in, Dean, is a person had read a book called Talk Like Ted that had a great portion of the presentation, a great proportion of your presentation should be storytelling. Do you agree? How important is storytelling in the Sage Presence model?
Well, storytelling is pretty important. There's two versions of storytelling. So let me describe the two. One version of story structure or storytelling is business storytelling, which is often point making. Point making is, who are we talking about? What challenges do they have? What would success look like? And how do we get them there? It's those simple things. That's actually main character, beginning, middle, and end. Now, another way to think about that is, who are we talking about? Problem, solution, outcome. You want to hit all those to make a point. And this is one of the things we tailor. If it's drivers who are results focused, we start with the end. The result you need is this. Here's what's in the way. Our solution to get you there is this. And so this is a simple story model that maps out the story structure of making a point. You got a main character who's got a problem. You're the solution, which makes you the hero of the story. They're the main character of the story who has the problem and needs to get to the outcome, the goal. You're the hero who provides the solution in the middle. It's like building a bridge so that your main character can get from the problem to the outcome. You are a bridge builder in story structure. So that story, this is how I make a point. And so when I said the inspirers and drivers want the concept first, here's your concept. We got to get these people to this result, but these things are in their way. Here's how we'll get them there. Boom. Then unpack the details. Dive into the details second. Or with thinkers, go through the details so the point will be meaningful, and you put the point at the end. But this is how you make a point. That's storytelling one. Drop the PowerPoint, Troy, and I want to tell you about storytelling number two. I know time is waning here. Story model number two is more like campfire storytelling. It's like, okay, so, we all got together and we got on the boat, right? And it was sunny and nobody expected a storm coming. So nobody brought any covering and we got out into the lake, right? That's campfire storytelling. Campfire storytelling certainly works in a business sense. You can say, Troy and I went and took a look at your site. So Troy picked me up and we went last Tuesday. You remember last week, it was sweltering hot. So we came in the South Side, XYZ. That is business storytelling where you're illustrating an example. Here's what I want you to understand about this. Studies show that there's two mindsets that a listener can be in. One mindset is the one we're usually in. It sounds scary, but it's not. It's a good thing. We always counter argue what we hear to some degree. If somebody says, what should we do on Saturday? And somebody says, I really think we ought to take care of the yard. Let's mow the lawn. Part of you is thinking, but there's other things we could do. We could be taking the dogs to the park. Might be based on preferences, or somebody might say, you know what we should spend our money on this year is XYZ. We should finally get that pool for the yard. Part of you is thinking, gosh, we should probably invest in fixing the roof. We're designed to consider alternatives and counter argue. So just recognize when you're doing the business story structure that we just talked about, your audience is going to be processing, is that really the problem? Is that really the goal we want? Is that a good solution? It works really, really well. Just process that they're counter arguing to just make sure they believe what you say. Campfire storytelling, they don't do that. In campfire storytelling, they visualize what you're talking about. Just as you visualize Troy picking me up and we driving, remember the sweltering heat. When I talk in that format, you're visualizing and you're not counter arguing. So sometimes strategically, we will do a story because we know what we have to tell them is not going to be popular. Imagine if you're telling them something, it's critical. They have to face something and they won't like it. And they've already said, we don't want to hear about it, but it's critical to our point of view. Well, we might die on this hill, but what I would recommend doing is tell a story. So talk it through verbally so they're visualizing and not counter arguing. And then you put the point at the end of that. So because this is a complicated, nuancy thing, let me just give it even simpler. Problem, solution, outcome for somebody is how most business points are made. It's most of your communication. When you want to have them thinking, visualizing, imagining, or when you have delicate material to talk about, it's often helpful to use the illustrative campfire storytelling story. And those are your two options. We use them a lot. They're very powerful.
Dean, as we wrap up here in our last few minutes, I have one final question. You can give probably a 30-second response to, and then we'll put our book information out there. But how do you deal with technological complications in the middle of a Zoom interview?
Well, let's tie this. I'm going to need a full minute on this. I want to make it simple. Joy, happiness, it really sells. We had an interview. It was a hybrid interview, and everything went wrong. If you could imagine it going wrong, it went wrong. And we won the interview. And they told us why. We were so positive. We kept working the problem. We stayed happy. What we had trained our team to do is really appreciate through the lens. So look, right now I'm appreciating you. I'm appreciating you, the AIA audience who's listening. I'm getting exposure to new people and I'm valuing you. Now watch me turn that off. There's nothing wrong with the steely confidence, but when my heart is deactivated, you notice sort of the steely flatness. So I'm going to show you turning it back on. Now I'm appreciating you. You can hear it in my voice. My voice changes, my face changes. We appreciated while things were going wrong. So if you can bring joy or warmth, I like appreciating because it's warm and it tailors to the situation. You can be a much more positive force. And what the client said to us is, you are clearly the team we want to be with when things go wrong on a project. And we know things go wrong. We've done them before. We know it's not easy. You're a team that we trust. And because we showed positiveness while things went wrong. So my last point, Troy, throw it back to you, is appreciation is the other half of screen presence. Screen presence is I see you, I'm making eye contact with you or through the lens, and I'm appreciating you. This is where charisma comes in. I am bold and nurturing at the same time. The boldness is the eye contact, the warmth is the appreciation, and a screen presence that really works for AEC interviews. And this also works live with real people, one eye connection at a time. It is the command and nurture presence. So it's direct eye contact for command and it's appreciating for nurture. And those two things make a really inviting, powerful presence, a leader you'd want to follow. So that'd be the most magical thing I can share with you is appreciate the people you're talking with and bring that command and nurture vibe. And you're going to have screen presence and you're going to have stage presence and you're going to change the way they react to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dean. I'm going to bring up here a screen share of this. So you can share the code. You can go to our website, sagepresence.com/shop. When you go to purchase the book, Winning Virtual AEC Interviews, feel free to use the code AIAPGH, and that'll give you access to a copy of our book. You pay for shipping, we'll send you the book. Any other final thoughts, Dean, as we wrap up our session today?
I would just simply say that when I talk to AEC professionals, but particularly those in architecture, you love your work. And if there's any one mistake that I see made is we don't choose to love our work now in front of them. So it's not just the idea that you love your work, but love your work in an active way when you're in an interview, when you're presenting your findings. And when we see the architecture folks who have the most power, they're loving their work now. So you can see them loving their work. It's not just an informational thing that you can see, that you don't get to see. So love your work while you're presenting, and then much more of your personality and your vibe is going to come through. Your winning presence can tie to one simple concept. If none of the other things we said stuck, I love my work, so I'm going to love it now.
Excellent. Thank you, Dean. In the chat window as well, I've made sure to include a link to our blog and vlog as well. So if you need additional support material, check that out. There are a number of videos there that post every Tuesday and Thursday. Thank you, AIA Pittsburgh, for this opportunity. Again, we hope you enjoyed this information. It was a pleasure for us to present with you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Troy. We really appreciate you joining us today. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a great afternoon.